Tonight, there is some breaking news, so we're going to update folks with that as well. An important one that none of us are going to let go. Laura, thank you very much.
Have a great show.
Thank you. We will. Here's what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, after days of defiance, even as top Democrats called for his resignation, John Conyers announces an early retirement.
My legacy can't be compromised or diminished in any way.
Could past ethics charges cloud Conyers' son as he now seeks his father's seat? Steyerwald is here to break it down. Plus,
it's hard to believe that the government is forcing me to choose between providing for my family and my employees and violating my relationship with God.
Justice Kennedy, who helped push the Supreme Court to broaden rights for the LGBT community, signals a Christian baker who refused to do a custom wedding cake for a same-sex couple hasn't gotten the tolerance he deserves. We'll speak with his attorney in a Fox News at Night exclusive.
Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Well, President Trump is set to fulfill a major campaign promise tomorrow, at least in part, announcing plans for a new home for the U.S. Embassy in Israel, Jerusalem. The proposal is already evoking strong reaction from some leaders in the Middle East who say this move will disrupt the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. The president's also expected to announce plans to officially recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Correspondent Leland Vittert has more on the story. All right, Leland, how much is really going to change here?
Well, at least in the beginning, Shannon, a lot more is changing in terms of words than in terms of where the embassy is actually located. Mr. Trump is recognizing Jerusalem as the capital, but he's also signing a waiver so the embassy doesn't have to move and may not move till after the 2020 election. The Israelis consider Jerusalem their capital. That's where the prime minister lives and their parliament sits. But for decades, the U.S. embassy has been 60 miles away in Tel Aviv, a nod to hopes for brokering a peace deal with the Palestinians that, among other things, would decide the final status of Jerusalem. A White House official on background says recognizing Jerusalem as the capital is just affirming a reality, and went to great lengths to say this doesn't foreshadow American views of how Jerusalem should be divided up or any of the other negotiating points. The Palestinians, well, they want Jerusalem as their capital as well. But they, along with their Arab allies, aren't happy. Video tonight out of Bethlehem, where they are already burning pictures of President Trump in the West Bank. And Palestinian leaders have called for what they call 3 days of rage. The U.S. consulate in Jerusalem, noteworthy, not the embassy still in Tel Aviv, issued a warning on Twitter, complete with emojis, saying U.S. government employees and family members aren't allowed to travel to Jerusalem's Old City or West Bank, and advising all U.S. citizens to take these restrictions into consideration for their own plans. Thousands of American citizens live in the West Bank on Jewish settlements, which are often targeted by Palestinian violence. The Israeli security forces are preparing for protests, and Shannon, we're told from the Pentagon that around the Middle East, Marine Corps anti-terrorism teams have already deployed to bolster security at other U.S. embassies.
All right, Leland, so do we know any timetable for when an embassy would actually open in Jerusalem?
And that is the big question tonight. White House officials say it could take 3 or 4 years to locate, design, fund, and build a new U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. Jerusalem city officials, though, are quoted as saying it could quite literally open tomorrow. Just change the name on the massive new U.S. facility. A little ground truth. This was us in May in Jerusalem at that new sprawling U.S. consulate annex. That annex was reportedly built to house a new U.S. embassy sometime in the future. Certainly looked like that when I visited. Massive, well protected. The security teams there confronted us when we were hundreds of yards away filming. But when pressed why the State Department wouldn't just change the plaque on the door, making it the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, the White House demurred some vague security and facility concerns, which then begs a big question, whether the consulate facilities in Jerusalem aren't safe, or if the White House wanted to make an announcement right now without really having to change any facts on the ground. Perhaps, Shannon, a question Vice President Mike Pence will face when he visits Israel less than 2 weeks from right now.
All right, it's a question we are asking tonight as well. Leland Vittert, thank you very much. Fox News foreign policy analyst Kyron Skinner is here. She advised President Trump during the transition and tonight was on a call with the White House about this very topic. She's a professor of international relations at Carnegie Mellon and a research fellow at the Hoover Institution. Great to have you with us tonight. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about some of what Leland had to say there. We will have the speech from the president 1 o'clock tomorrow. Apparently, we're going to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital, but the embassy's not going to get there right away. We're hearing some putting on the brakes a little bit from the White House about that move actually happening. Why?
Well, it's actually not putting on the brakes. There's some realities about moving an embassy. It takes many, many years to build embassies, to find the right spot, to build the security apparatus. So that's part of it. And you know, it was in 1995 that Congress passed in a overwhelmingly bipartisan way the Jerusalem Embassy Act, saying that this should in fact occur, moving our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But nothing really has been done until President Trump decided to take action. He campaigned on this a year ago, talking very strongly about the need to move our embassy. And it's not so much a campaign promise, but part of his overall foreign policy. It, to me, is an application of what he's called principled realism. He's recognizing the fact that Jerusalem is the headquarters for the Israeli government. The legislature is there. The Supreme Court is there. Most of the administrative part of the state is there. And he's saying, I'm recognizing this without making a broader determination about sovereignty and juridical issues, which will have to happen between the Israelis and Palestinians. I think he's actually trying to provide an assist to them by saying the sovereignty issues are your own. We're making a determination that's in the interest of the United States.
Okay, so as Leland showed the footage there of the big consulate annex that he was observing in May, and there are folks there on the ground who are also saying that facility is ready for this, and they wonder why there's a stall. I want to read a little bit of an article in Haaretz today saying city planning officials shrugged that there's no need to build anything new to house the embassy in the Israeli capital. The Americans built a big new consulate in the Jerusalem neighborhood of Arnona, which had been planned in advance to be converted into the actual embassy one day. All the Americans need to do is change the sign on the door, they say.
I think that's a little naive. I think a consulate is not an embassy, and there are different facilities in embassies that don't necessarily exist in consulates, but also this may be part of a larger rethinking about where the U.S. physically wants to be in Jerusalem. And the consulate was prepared before this announcement. Clearly, it's been there. So I think I would put that aside. That, to me, is not the biggest issue we're facing. It's really to make sure that this move is consistent with the broader Middle East strategy of the president.
Let me get you to respond to one of the critics. This is a spokesman for the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas about how they feel about these announcements.
This is against the international law, and this will be unacceptable from our side. If this happens, it would complicate things. It would put an obstacle to the peace process. Maybe it will be the end of the peace process.
And quickly there, he says it might be the end of the peace process.
Yes, but you know, also the president has talked with him and a number of leaders in the Arab world in this year and even in the last 24 hours. You would expect to hear that publicly, but very few are saying that the United States will not be the indispensable outside broker in the Middle East peace process. And so I think that's what's key. The United States is central to what will happen as an outside facilitator for Middle East peace. It has to act in its own interests, but the parties understand that the United States brings a kind of moral and strategic clarity that no other nation can provide.
And it sounds like President Trump has invited Mahmoud Abbas here to Washington as well, so we'll watch that closely. A professor, among many other things. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Good to see you. All right, this is a Fox News alert. Our sister station, Sky News, is reporting that security forces in England have foiled a terror plot to assassinate British Prime Minister Theresa May. 2 men have been arrested. They're due to appear in court tomorrow morning. Sky says the suspected terrorist allegedly planned to attack the Prime Minister's residence at 10 Downing Street with some sort of improvised explosive device. And back here at home, the most senior member of the House will not be returning to Capitol Hill. Michigan Democratic Congressman John Conyers announced his resignation today, or what he's calling a retirement, amid accusations of sexual harassment by at least 6 women. Ed Henry's here tonight with details, including word of another Conyers accuser surfacing. Hi, Ed.
That's right, Shannon. New tonight, we're learning a 4th accuser was about to go public against John Conyers, so he may have been trying to get ahead of more trouble, as a Democrat is one of the first politicians to fall in the sexual harassment scandals that have taken out powerful men in various industries. The 88-year-old Conyers was the dean of the House after several decades in office. He was already dealing with allegations of harassment that he has denied from at least 3 women. Breaking tonight, attorney Lisa Bloom revealed she has an affidavit from another woman, Dolores Lyons, who claims she was victimized by the congressman while serving as a volunteer for him in the 2011 to 2012 timeframe. Bloom tweeting out, quote, "Here's another woman stepping forward to document her sexual harassment claims against John Conyers, who still denies sexually harassing anyone. Conyers said he wasn't getting due process, but he knew our witnesses were prepared to testify before the Ethics Committee." An attorney for Conyers insists the woman came into Conyers' office and flirted with him and is denying the claim against the congressman, who announced his exit from a hospital where he's being treated for a stress-related illness. Listen to what he said.
I am retiring today, and I want everyone to know how much I appreciate the support, the incredible, undiminished support I've received across the years.
Yet it appears the drama is not completely over. The congressman endorsed his son, John Conyers III, to replace him, but a grandnephew of the congressman, State Senator Ian Conyers, insists he's running as well. Remember, House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi got into hot water for initially calling Conyers an icon and appearing to doubt the accounts of some of his accusers. Under political pressure, she reversed course and called on him to resign. Tonight, Pelosi is praising what she calls the, quote, brave women who came forward, and says she's praying for the congressman and his family. Shannon.
All right, Ed Henry, thank you very much. Well, former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon is campaigning with Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore in Alabama tonight. President Trump officially endorsed Moore yesterday, and the Republican National Committee is backing him again, sending funding back into that race. Prominent Republicans are tempering their initial calls for Moore to drop out of the race after several accusations of sexual misconduct have surfaced. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell now says Alabama voters should decide Moore's fate. Well, during a luncheon with GOP senators, President Trump touted Republican Party unity, all while sitting right next to Arizona Senator Jeff Flake. If you'll remember, he's openly criticized the president and urged his colleagues against complicity. And despite that, this was the president's take today.
We're all on the same page. There's a great spirit in the Republican Party like I've never seen before, like a lot of people have said they've never seen before. They've never seen anything like this, the unity. So I think a lot of very good things are going to happen. It's going to happen very fast.
Here to react, Fox News politics editor Chris Steyerwalt. Okay, good to have you with us. You're already chuckling. But after this comment about unity, and apparently there was some discussion of Roy Moore during this conversation, and my understanding is that Senator Flake said, I didn't engage with the president. I think he's wrong about that. But then we got a tweet that we want to show everyone this afternoon from Senator Flake. It's a check that appears to be written from him to Doug Jones, Roy Moore's opponent, a pretty liberal Democrat down there in Alabama. He says in the subject line for this check, country over party. So
Lot to unpack there, Counselor.
That feels like there's a little trolling going on there.
Got a lot to unpack there. Well, first of all, Doug Jones is only a liberal Democrat by the standards of Alabama. In most of the country, he would be a Republican.
Well, you know, those kinds of things.
The Republicans are definitely capitalizing on the abortion issue, and his stance is as pro-choice, which, of course, the Democrats won't let you be a Democrat unless you're pro-choice, just like the Republicans.
Price of admission.
It's just as pro-life substantially as for Republicans. But I love the look on Jeff Flake's face.
I know, when the president's talking.
He looked like they were serving like a possum stew that he was going to have to try to choke down. But, you know, look, Flake has been accused of peacocking a little bit on this, that he's out and claiming credit for doing this. And Ben Sass, his colleague from Nebraska, basically said this: you don't have to choose. It's not necessary to choose between someone credibly accused of abusing his position as a prosecuting attorney to try to pick up young teenagers and a person who supports elective abortion. And what Sass's message to Flake was, you don't have to pick between those two things. You can write somebody in or you can not vote. If the system fails you in that way, it's not incumbent on you to make a choice. And what's happening right now in Alabama is the Republicans very much are saying it doesn't matter whether he did it. It doesn't matter whether you like him. It doesn't matter any of these things. You just have to stick with your team and you have to vote for Roy Moore, even though everybody increasingly sees more and more evidence around Moore and no real credible denials coming from it.
Well, you know, he denies everything.
Well, now he's actually changed his denial.
I mean, some of these people he says he did know, but he denies doing anything wrong.
No, now he's backed off that. Now he says he never knew any of them. Now it's a totally blanket, abject denial.
Okay, well then that's a denial.
That's a super denial.
That's a super denial. Okay. Now, somebody who also is denying a lot of stuff, but is no longer coming back to Capitol Hill is Representative John Conyers. He said that he's not resigning. He's announcing his retirement effective today. So I guess if you retire in the middle of your term, it's not a resignation.
Shh. I mean, Lordy day. Look, the amount of arrogance, the amount of hubris that is on display in American politics has always been, and I'm not going to say that it hasn't been.
No, there's plenty of it up there on the Hill.
But the stench of the hubris and the arrogance and the ego around these people, and whether it's Roy Moore down in Alabama or whether it is John Conyers, who will not say I'm quitting in the stench of failure.
I'm retiring.
I'm having a surprise retirement. It's a surprise retirement.
Effective today.
Effective right now. And to do that, and then that this person leaving after damaging the reputation of his party, damaging the institution in which he claims to hold in great reverence, and damaging all of these things, that this person, in absolute disgrace, would dare to instruct the constituents who he failed. He failed these people, that he would have the temerity to then instruct them to keep a dynasty going in his seat by putting his 27-year-old son in it. It is beyond. It goes, the amount of arrogance, the amount of hubris that we're seeing, whether it's in Alabama or whether we're seeing in Detroit, we've lost the tether here, folks.
Well, okay, but he has a great nephew who is currently a state lawmaker, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Who also has already said he wants to run for the seat. So Christmas is going to be a little awkward at the Conyers household, is all I'm saying. It
should tell us a little something about the way Detroit politics are working. If, in fact, a seat in the House is treated as a heritable sinecure, that this is a noble title, a position that should be held by one family and one family only, that is un-American. It's not cool.
Okay, also not cool that we're out of time, but I have to ask you quickly, there are Republicans facing charges on the Hill. There are other Democrats on both sides, the House and the Senate. So did those folks go anywhere, or do you think they hang on?
Paul Ryan and Nancy Pelosi can't agree on how to keep the government open, but I bet they can find a way to agree to stop the pain and keep these revelations from coming and clamp down on making sure that these things don't come out, because they got a lot of dirty dogs that they want to keep in the pound.
Oh, dirty dogs they want to keep in the pound. All right, I'm gonna tweet that a little bit later. Chris, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, a week after he was cleared of state charges of murder and involuntary manslaughter, illegal immigrant Jose Inez Garcia Zarate is facing new charges, this time brought by the feds. He was indicted today on both gun and immigration violations. Last week, you'll remember, jury found Garcia Zarate not guilty in the shooting death of 32-year-old Kate Steinle. He admits shooting her. We're going to have a whole lot more on that unfolding story later on in the show, including a very spirited debate, I predict. So stick around for that. And we're going to break down the latest developments in the unfolding special counsel controversy. Yet more indications tonight of potential anti-Trump bias by key investigators on the team. And we're going to tell you about the very hot bench inside the Supreme Court, where the justices heard arguments in a landmark case pitting a gay couple against a Christian cake baker. What potential swing justice Anthony Kennedy had to say. All right now.